When you remove and you have a season where you've kind of had to fully resign to yourself, you know, the goals and the objectives and the growth and the money, I think is just extra. And if you can get yourself to not compare, it's a lot more fun along the way.
See how you do under pressure. Yeah, I've been wanted this.
I feel like this is the only genuine conversation I have like all week.
Myself up, moving on to the better.
We have Omar Amadea. Did I pronounce that right?
That's right.
Man,
Amadea.
I know I couldn't spell it. When even looking at it, it was tough to spell. So,
Yeah.
man, welcome to be here.
Thanks for having me.
Omar, this is kind of weird, but Omar's somebody that I've just seen over and over in Tulsa. We just run into each other so much, and I've always felt, hopefully this doesn't scare you away, but I've always felt like you and I either are or will be connected somehow. It's been a really weird deal. Like,
sure.
it's just, he comes up everywhere that I go.
Yeah.
There's Omar. I used to go in and have breakfast at this place called BBD. It's still around, great place.
Classic.
He was waiting tables. I'd see him there all the time. Next, I got to kind of see that he got into the financial markets, and I'd see him everywhere. And it's just run into him in the random places. And just this last weekend, I went on a hunt out at the ranch that we went to that one time. And so it's a bunch of older guys, and they're asking for money for some things, and which is cool because we want to try to support them. And so most of the people walk in, and guess who walks in?
This guy,
Omar. And I know him, but I don't know him.
That's very well said.
Right?
Yeah.
And so when we asked him all these questions for this podcast, some of these answers are incredible. And so I'm really, really excited to have you here and actually finally start to get to know you, because like I'm telling you, it's just this feeling that I have that somehow I actually assume we would work together at some point, one way or another. But somehow we're intertwined, and we're gonna be pretty good friends moving forward.
I would agree, 100%.
And it sounds like if you wouldn't have asked him on, maybe at some point I would have brought him on, because the same exact thing happened with him. Well, first of all, I mean, you can't even play this. So I went into the bathroom, and then I walk, and he's walking out, and then we just said hi to each other. I didn't even know it was him.
Okay.
And then we walk in, and I'm like, oh, this is the guy we were talking to.
Yeah.
And then I was having coffee with an agent at the Collaborative, saw you there.
Love that place.
And then I think I ran into you there a couple of times, but do you ever go to the Three Natives South?
I haven't.
Okay, I thought maybe I had ran into you there one time.
Yeah.
And then it was not too far from BBD there. So, but man, I'm super excited. Yeah.
Likewise.
So now you're a financial advisor.
It's been about 12 years.
You're, man, so it's been a long time since he was working at that restaurant.
I'm telling you, it's the craziest thing. It's been 20 years.
20 years.
20 years. It has been.
We've been running into each other in Tulsa for 20 years, dude.
Well, from waiting at tables at BBD to now, you have your own firm, you partner up with somebody else, and you're managing how much in assets?
Right around $200 million.
$200 million.
And growing.
How did that happen? How did that transition happen from going from waiting table?
There. Let's get started there.
Great question. So I got the job at Brookside by Day when I was 15. So it was like my second real job. First job was at Cedar Ridge Country. I was a busboy at the country club, and wanted to wait tables. I wanted to upgrade. So you had to be 16 to get the job as a waiter. And so I will be honest, I lied. So I was young. So I lied. I said I was 16 and started waiting tables there. And then that took me from 15 to about 22. So that got me through college. And that was kind of my hustle.
At ORU?
I went to Oklahoma State.
Oklahoma State. That's right. You
so
told
I
me
would
that.
travel back and forth, and
good for you.
Had a roofing company. That's a whole other conversation. And so that was like 7 years of my life. And at my senior year at OSU, I studied finance and accounting, trying to figure out what I wanted to do. I wanted to go do the New York Wall Street thing and try to get into investment banking, and then got cancer. So that was a big curveball. And when you have that, you kind of start to re-question everything, because you're faced with mortality and want to make my time here on earth worth it. And I was like, all right, well, I don't think my motives were fully pure with the whole New York thing. It was really just kind of money oriented. So I started asking myself, how can I take my passion for finance and my passion for people and marry the two passions? And personal finance just made sense. And so that's how that came about. And then Northwestern Mutual is where I started, which you did the internship with them.
I did an entire summer of internship, which is basically cold calling a bunch of people that don't want to hear from I was 20 at the time, asking them like what their personal wealth was.
As all that.
I mean, I had to do like this whole application that was crazy. Imagine some like 18-year-old calling, trying to give you advice on where to invest
Put
your money.
Exactly. Well,
Alfredo has made that place sound like hell on earth every time he talks about it.
Yeah.
It was
I'm
rough.
so glad, man.
It wasn't. It was a great experience,
Great
and he'll tell you. I mean, like it just. If anything ever got me out of my comfort zone to just call anyone, like if you come to my office and you're like, hey, I'm having trouble calling real estate agents, which is what we do. I'm like, watch this. I'll do it right now.
Yeah.
And it was that made me able to do that.
it forces that out of you. It really does.
So talk to me about that. We kind of just, and I honestly I remember reading that, but you just kind of reminded me. So how old were you, and how long did you have it for? I'm assuming, like, when did you beat it? Like, walk me through that. That's crazy to me.
So 2010, I was playing rugby, and that was like the first time I had felt a symptom. So I remember I had a longer run. I got tackled and I got up, and it wasn't like a contact tackle. He just kind of pulled me down, and I got up and I got super lightheaded, and I fell from vertigo. It wasn't because of the impact. And I was like, that's so weird. And from that point on, I was just like, I kept getting dizzy, and I just kept getting general fatigue and weakness. So I started getting some diagnostics done and trying to figure out what's going on. Finally, all the doctors were like, you're fine. You're young. Just eat right, stay active. And I knew something was off. I just knew it. But I quit searching for it. And then about 6 months later, in March of 2011, I was playing basketball, and I started to develop like this horrible pain right here in my chest. And it would only happen when I would breathe. So it was specific to like breathing. And I went to the ER and said, I just need you to scan right here. And they scanned it, and it was a X-ray. And at this point, I had not seen a doctor. And then they said, hey, we want to do a CAT scan. And then after the CAT scan, the doctor came in, and she was like, hey. And I was thinking it was just like a dislocated rib or something. And she was like, hey, are your parents around? And she wanted them there. I was like, hey, just hit me with whatever it could be. Like, did I break a rib? And she's like, no, we think you have cancer. And crazy to hear those words at 23. And so that started a whole new season of my life and a whole new journey.
What kind of cancer? What was it?
It was lymphoma. Yeah, so it was all in my lymph nodes. It was like a stage 3. So not fully stage 4. It was on, I think, all upper hemisphere and then one side of my lower hemisphere. Yeah. Wow. Yeah.
And how long was it until you beat it?
Yeah. So that was March. I was a senior in college. So I asked my oncologist, hey, can I go and just graduate college and then we can start treatment? Because I want to finish this season. And he was like, the quicker the better, but I think we'll be fine in 2 months. Because I wanted my hair for my pictures, because I knew I'd lose it, and I ended up losing it anyway, but that's a whole other conversation.
Man, that's heavy.
Yeah. So we did chemo in May, and after 8 treatments, so 2 months, it was completely gone. And then
Like remission.
Remission. He wanted to, the protocol was 6 months, so we ended up going. We met in the middle at 4. I didn't want to subject my body to all that chemotherapy, so 4 months of chemo. After 2 months, it was gone.
Wow.
Yeah, and I just, God, I mean, I don't know. He worked it. I think it was maybe gone before. I don't know. But it was definitely a season where I really, really, really stepped into that faith.
Well, there's like so much to unpack.
Yeah.
I don't know that we have time.
Yeah, it could be.
we might. So, because I want to continue to talk about this season of your life, but the whole faith thing. You used to be Muslim.
Yeah.
And you are now Christian.
That's right.
When did that happen?
Yeah. So the faith I came out of, the religion is called Druze. It's like a sect of Islam. It's a Middle Eastern religion. Great people, great morals. But I had so many questions growing up. My mom always said that I always was asking about God. And when I was a senior in high school, I got invited to a church here in town. And it made sense. They had a big impact on the youth, big youth group, kind of like 180. So I went, and I went for the people and the pizza and the sports. And after 3 months of going there, it all made sense. And I was like, how can anyone hear this and not want it? And it really just answered a lot of questions that I had as a 17-year-old, 18-year-old guy.
How did that go over with your family?
It was a tough pill to swallow for both of my parents. My dad didn't talk to me for probably 2 to 3 months. He was just upset. I mean, could you imagine?
Oh yeah.
I know you guys are strong in your faith if one of your kids decided to do something else. So it all really came full circle when I got sick, you know, because that was a big deal for our family. And my dad, we were sitting on the back porch, I remember it, and he's like, I just need you to get better. And if you want to worship a rock, I support that. So whatever your faith choice is, like, I'm with you.
Wow.
And that's been it. And it's been a fun journey.
And you really felt that God really moved in those 2 months in that time. I mean,
Brother,
it's almost unexplainable, right?
it's unbelievable. Like, there was a full surrender, because you have to get there, I think, to beat something like that. Yeah, I've got some really cool stories. I'll tell you one super, super quick.
No, you don't have to be quick, man. I love this stuff.
Just the
This is
highlights.
great.
So yeah, I was praying and meditating for hours a day. It's the most dialed in I've ever been. Going on extended fasts, like what the Buddhists would call Zen. Like I was there. I was dead, but in a good way. I remember there was a time where I didn't look in the mirror it was like 2 months. I just like, it doesn't matter, you know? So I was with some buddies praying, had a great group of friends that rallied around me. And this was like probably 11 p.m. or maybe even around midnight on a Friday night. And I felt the Lord kind of give me an image. It was like an impression. And I needed to go to 61st and Peoria at night on a Friday. And there was a black guy wearing a white shirt walking west. And I needed to go have a interaction with him. So at that point in my life, I was doing everything that I felt like I should do. Like I was really acting on those things. So I hopped in my Jeep. My buddy came with me.
Wait a minute. So you hadn't seen this guy. The impression was that you were going to see a black guy in a white shirt walking west.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So I hopped in my car. My buddy came in with me, and we're driving down 61st, past Lewis, on the way to Peoria. There he is on the north side of the road walking west. And I was like, all right, let's go. So I got out, and I said, hey, do you need anything? He was very defensive, asked me to leave him alone. I said, can I give you a ride? Like, it's late. He's like, brother, just leave me alone. Like, mind your business. And then I said, here's the deal, man. I was at home praying, and God told me to come meet you. And his guard came down. He's like, all right, can you give me a ride? I said, to get in. So he hopped in the front seat. My buddy went to the back, and we're just hanging out. You know, I'm trying to build some rapport, put on some good music and asking them some questions. So he begins to open up. So he worked at Steak and Shake on 61st and Memorial, and he would have to walk home across the river to West Tulsa a few times a week because no one could give him a ride. Dad was in prison. Mom was on drugs. Girlfriend just left him. He was probably 20, 21. And so we transitioned to the faith conversation, and he's like, yeah, I've kind of strayed away, this and that. And I said, man, if you need anything, just let me know. So we get to his house, and I said, hey, would you by any chance want to rededicate your life to Christ? And he says, yeah, let's do it. So he prays. He gets all excited. You can tell that the weight has kind of been lifted. And he's getting out of the car, and then he gets back in. He says, man, you're not going to believe this. I said, well, what you got? He's like, 3 or 4 times a week I walk home, and life has been super tough. I walk across this bridge, the Riverside Bridge, a few times a week. And I always think about jumping off. Tonight was the night I was going to do it. Yeah.
Wow. That gave me chills, man.
Yeah, man. I mean, that's one of the coolest things I've been a part of. And it was not me. It was just saying yes and going and being a little uncomfortable.
That's amazing.
Yeah, and there were several stories like that. And so that's what happens when you listen.
So I mean, I'm hogging all the questions here,
No,
but
you're good.
but how did that season change you? You know, there's some obvious ways that we all think that something like that happening to us would change us, but in retrospect, looking back, I've learned that those hard seasons in our life is what makes us who we truly are and where we learn. But I can't really put myself in your shoes here. I just can't do it. I can imagine it. I can whatever. But what is it you think that changed the most for you, of who you are today?
I think when you're given a scenario where you have to truly, truly, truly face mortality and accept death, Like really, like we can cognitively like imagine that.
Did you think, like, you thought you were gonna die? Like,
There was
whenever they told you that, like, what part of you, like,
Because it had metastasized, right? It is spreading.
It was spreading, so there was a chance. I mean, there was great protocol for it, but you know, there was a TU football player that passed from the same thing.
Did they give you like years or months or anything?
No, they gave me like odds.
Okay, gotcha.
It was high odds of like survival.
Okay, good.
And then, you know, there was a local pastor that died of lymphoma. And although like odds were in my favor, like I can't say that I wasn't scared.
Yeah, if I had a 5% chance of dying, I'd be really, really scared.
Yeah, it was high. It was probably 25, I think, something like that. So 1 out of 4. And so, you know, you had to accept that. And you had to be okay with that. And I think once you can do that, you really start to live. And I don't think I've had a bad day since.
That's
Wow.
amazing.
Yeah, definitely not 2 bad days in a row. I'll give myself 1 bad
are your
day.
parents still Muslim?
So my mom became a Christian on her
wow.
deathbed.
Oh wow.
I got the opportunity to pray with her
So on top of all this, your mom has passed as well.
since in 2019. Yeah. I think the hardest thing in life is to lose a good mother.
Yeah.
You know, some people don't have a good mother, but I had a great mother. It was very difficult.
Wow.
But you know, we'll see her again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when you were going through that season, you know, I feel like us three even have similar personalities
Yep.
in the sense that we are just on this mission to accomplish, right?
Yep.
Like we're wanting to get. I see you as a serial entrepreneur. You're just trying to like, you know, and Will's. You know, I remember being Will's age. I'm older than Will,
Yeah.
but I remember
I'm
the
starting
feeling.
to feel old. So.
He just turned 31.
Yeah.
Will's very like milestone based. Like he's like, what have I accomplished by this age? And I remember at him as his age telling somebody at one point being like, I feel like I haven't accomplished what I should have at this point in my life.
Yes.
Like I haven't got enough there. And I feel that's one of the things that I would struggle with the most at that point, that I'm like facing potentially, like you said, mortality.
Yep.
And being like, but I haven't done what I've wanted to do.
Yeah.
And so how was that? Because I know you have like 3 or 4 businesses right now. You're
Yeah.
accomplishing a lot. I feel like it's just the beginning for you. Like you got so much more to go.
Yeah.
What did that feel like?
You know, that's the tug of war I have internally, is balancing my goals with what I learned during that season, because that's the happiest I've ever been. And
What's the happiest you've ever been?
when I was sick.
Well, I think
Wait,
that
wait,
you're.
wait,
I
wait,
think
what?
you're asking how he handled it when he found out he was sick. Correct?
Yeah, but hold on.
Yeah.
What do you mean it's the happiest you've ever been?
That's the most joy I think I've ever had.
While you were sick, because every day meant so much.
Yeah,
and I'm gonna
100%.
take a wild guess.
I mean, I'm a happy guy now, but like,
No,
it's,
you are.
it's,
You
yeah,
are.
It's
I've
not,
I've never ran into you, and you're just like
it's not
kicking
compared.
rocks.
There's nothing compared to the.
And I'm gonna take a
wavelength I was
wild
on.
guess. It's because like I can imagine like the way that I am. If that happened to me, all those milestones and that would be out the
Out
window.
the window.
That would be, for me, that would be at the window.
Yeah.
So I can see why you're saying that. So, but how has that helped you now?
Yeah.
As far as like, do you not kind of, is it easy for you to not compare yourself or not look in the mirror and be like, man, you know, we could be 300 million or whatever. Like, how has that helped you?
Yeah, that's a great question. Both of them were solid questions. So I think everything from here on out is kind of like icing on the cake. You know, that's what changed, was the value and the meaning comes from living life well and making an impact. And so the goals and the finances and the business growth, when you remove and you have a season where you've kind of had to fully resign to yourself, you know, the goals and the objectives and the growth and the money, I think, is just extra. And if you can get yourself to not compare, it's a lot more fun along the way. So I would say that's what happened. Like, I don't look to my left or to my right. I have my goals, I have my reasons, I'm doing them, and it's to make impact. And it's just a lot more fun to do it that way.
I feel that a lot of the pressures that I have
Yeah.
are from not necessarily pleasing myself,
Yep.
but accomplishing things so that others see what I have accomplished.
Exactly. That's not, yeah.
And that's why I'm so intrigued by you saying because I could see myself in a situation like that, almost being at peace with it because I'm not in control of that. Like when I get on a plane, I don't have any fear of being on a plane.
Yeah.
I don't have any fear of being in a passenger in a car, because at the end of the day, if that plane crashes, that car crash, it wasn't my fault.
Sure.
I didn't do it.
Yeah.
And I feel like there's a lot of things that I approach that way.
Yeah.
And I'm like I said, I really like what you said about, and I want to hear more about it. How you said that was the happiest I've ever been.
100%.
Because at that point, all those things melted away. It didn't matter anymore.
That's a very well said. They melted away. They just kind of fell off. Yeah.
And it just goes to show you can choose that now. Like I got home yesterday. My wife has this cat, and I don't like cats. And the deal was, if she got a cat, it had to stay at the barn. We have this big barn, and I'm like, it has to stay at the barn. Okay, fine. We need it for she claims.
Barn cat.
Barn cat. We have to have it. You can't not have a cat if you have a barn. But anyways, so this cat has slowly but surely came closer and closer to the house. First, the water was out in our patio, and I'm like, you said it was the barn. Now it's cold outside, so it has to go into the garage.
Okay.
And so it's tearing up the garage a little bit, whatever. Then I'm sitting in the house all the time. Well, yesterday I get home, and the cat is sitting on our island, and it's literally, we have this little filtered water spout, and it's literally there just drinking from the little filtered water spout.
What? From the filtered water. Not
Yeah,
even
like
the tap
it's just
water.
like, well, right. It's like the little filtered water. It's just like, it was such a hard stop for me of just my attitude. I was like, you know what? I got to go and run or do something. I got to get out of here. And because it just causes this fight and this, but at the end, what does it matter? Like that kind of stuff. I just got to learn to just, why is my drawing these lines in the sand? And that's what I feel you're talking about, is that those lines all like disappeared.
They definitely disappeared, and as time lapses, it's a fight to make sure that they stay disappeared, or if they've kind of relined to try to erase them. Because I would say the ego was as completely curbed as I could have got it to be at that point. And now, that's always the fight, keeping the ego in check. Ego is the enemy, etc. Yeah.
Man, I think it has to be a powerful why in order to, because it's so easy to just be like, don't compare yourself, don't make it about others, make it about yourself. Don't make a big fuss out about the small things. Sure. But there's got to be a big why, and of course, cancer is a huge why. And I think that you just actually even said what I'm saying, because you're saying now that it's been so long that you've went through that challenge. It's got to be a reminder of like, yourself. Yeah. So I'm curious on. I say that Alfredo made Western Mutual sound like hell on earth, Northwestern. But we've actually thought like, hey, about a year ago or so, we created a program where like we want to give opportunities for people that want to come into our business. Because I don't know how your business is, but like ours, it's a little bit more of like, if you're somewhat producing, everybody wants you. But if you're brand new, nobody wants to give you a chance, right? And we thought like, hey, this model could kind of weed out all the people that like maybe are not, or not necessarily that model, but just like, hey, some of that stuff that you guys were taught. So walk me through like, how did you start there? Because most of the people that started that company fell. Like, I think it's like maybe 1 in 20 or something. Yeah. How did you get from that to where you're at now, like being a partner at a firm?
That's a great question. So it was a journey. I probably quit 200 times in my head. And I was meeting with this guy who was my age. I was probably year 2.5 in the business. And I remember him showing me his 401k statements, his bank account statements, and the dude was crushing it. He had couple $100,000 saved up. I was 25, and I was like, that's crazy for a 25-year-old. And I had an epiphany at that point. It was right after I had like a few bad weeks. I had sent out my application to all these pharmaceutical sales companies, and I was done with financial services. And I got all rejection emails. There's probably 20 of them. I mean, I took a whole day off and applied everywhere. And I remember getting those rejection emails right after I had seen this guy's balance sheet. And I printed them out, and I told myself that I was not going to look at another job for a decade. And that was it. I put those rejection letters, I put them in a folder, and this is the competitive side of me. And I just wrote on the folder tab, prove them wrong. And because they passed on me. So now I want to make more than anyone that's going to hire me. And that's the competitive side of me. So I put my head down and I decided, hey, for the next 10 years, I'm going to be the best financial advisor I could become. And I think you can accomplish a lot in 10 years if you do it. And people underestimate, this is Craig Rochelle said this, underestimate what they can accomplish in a decade and overestimate what they can accomplish in a few years. Mm-hmm. So that was like that brick by brick approach that I've subscribed to. And eventually I got pretty darn good at it and built a book, decided that I wanted to move outside of Northwestern and be more on the independent side. So I took my time to find who I wanted to merge with, interviewed a bunch of people here in town, chose J.M. Brown, merged the company, and we've just...
What do you mean merge? You didn't start there just as a financial advisor?
So I brought the clients I had, and I moved them there.
And that's allowed?
It's allowed.
Like there's no non-compete in that situation?
No, not where I came from.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, and I had a smaller book, so that was 5 years in now, so that was 7 years ago. And between now and then, I've brought in like probably about $90 million.
What is your principles, or what are your basically approach to financial wealth for people?
Yeah.
What is your approach?
So that I teach people?
Sure.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
what is it that where are you leading people right
Yep.
now as far as when they come to you and you're just talking generally speaking what their priority should be when it comes to their financial wealth?
Absolutely. So if it's a younger person, I would say 35 and under. It's that philosophy that I just mentioned, like building wealth for most people is a day-by-day decision over 2 or 3 decades. And so setting up those good habits, setting up the buckets that they're funding, and more gamifying it and turning it into an automated process. So I always ask people, have you ever forgot to pay your mortgage? No. Have you ever forgot to pay your cell phone bill? Okay. But you do forget to save every now and then. So let's create your savings to be like a bill that you have to pay every single month. And that works. And then it's just time. I mean, Albert Einstein says compounding interest is the 8th wonder of the world. Mm-hmm. So you have to get that corpus built up, because one day in 30 years, when your account grows 8% and it's $2 million, that's $160,000. And that's a lot. Yeah. But if you have 8% on 1,000, that's $80. You can't get to the 2 million without starting at the 1,000 first. So that's what I teach people that are more in the accumulation phase of life.
So both of us being loan officers, I think that we're very adamant that people should own homes, especially where we live, where it's more affordable than in other places in the country. And you also have people that are in the finance world, Dave Ramsey, for example. And I mean, he has his, like, I think he owns part of a mortgage company, or maybe it's all his or whatever, that has a different approach of like, you got to have 20% down and all that stuff. I'm curious to hear from a financial advisor. And of course, the answer is going to be probably different depending on what level of income, level of assets you have and everything. But what do you think somebody should be looking at whenever they want to purchase a home?
Yeah. I think so long as you're falling into the budgetary parameters of what percent of your income goes to your mortgage, I think it's a good idea. If you can afford it, buy it, because eventually it'll become a paid off asset one day for most people. And at the very least, you have that. Mm-hmm. So it can act as more of like a safety net.
Would you suggest for somebody to put the 20% down or more if they have it? Or if, let's say, with 5%, I have a payment that I can comfortably pay every month to do the minimum down and then maybe invest the rest?
I would say that. Yeah, I think based on what markets could do, based on where, I mean, mortgage rates are higher now. It may be a little bit situational, but I'm personally, this is not financial advice, put as little in as I can to a deal, whether it's my personal home or investment, because I know what I can do with it outside of it.
And invest the rest.
Exactly.
I think people forget that the more you put into a house, it turns your ROI into less, because just because you put more down, the appreciation over time, it's not going to change.
It's not going to change it.
So I'm just curious, because like I said, it's hard for people to sometimes comprehend that, and also hard whenever it's like, well, sure, you're telling me this because if I buy a house, you're going to get paid, you know, but people, I mean, in both of our industries that we do, like sometimes people forget that there are certain jobs out there where people are really wanting to truly help others better their life and create generational wealth, you know?
Absolutely. I think these two are some of those jobs.
What is a good rate of return right now on a mid-risk level of portfolio?
I think the market did around 20% last year. So like for 2024, I think 15 and above was solid.
That's really good.
Yeah.
Do you kind of have your own fund where you're picking your own equities and that kind of thing and you're buying and selling? Or are you just putting people into mutuals and
Yeah, that's a good. So we don't do that. So one thing that separates us is we run algorithms and we actively manage accounts. So it's all data driven. We try to remove any emotion from investing. So, you know, back in 2022, we had one strategy that had like 220 trades by August because it was such a bad market. And so, yeah, we're looking for what's trending the best and trying to avoid what's trending the worst. As long as you can do those two things, you're in a solid spot.
And I've learned the hard way that, you know, you do what you're good at. I tried my hand at Robinhood through like when the pandemic started. And of course, as everybody saw on social media, everybody was posting their gains. But if you notice, nobody posts their Robinhood gains anymore.
No one does.
Because there's no gains. It's kind of like real estate. In those years, everybody was a real estate expert. Everybody was a flip guy. Everybody was a wholesaler. Everybody was all these kind of things. And they were posting, and now you don't see that. And that's the same thing here. You know, I made some really dumb moves thinking I knew what I was doing. I didn't have the time to really do the right research like you guys. And if I did the right research, I didn't even know what I was looking at. So that's why it's super important to have someone like you that actually does it for a living, spends day in and day out in it, knows when to make the move, when not to make the move. I've heard I think you always get people that they hear some news about something that happened and they're like, hey, you should go buy Tesla stock. Elon Musk is this or that. And they're like, the investors already knew that. I mean, it's already built in and cooked in. Like the people that know what they're doing already have made the moves and the stock has already adjusted. And that's why it's important to have somebody that has a beat on it like you.
It's I think it's super important unless you're the anomaly, which most people aren't.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
What's that cat guy's name? The GameStop guy? What's his name? He would be the anomaly.
He's a pretty smart guy. He's a pretty smart guy.
Roaring
Kitty. Roaring Kitty.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm glad you brought that up because I feel like there's so many people that come to us that maybe they finally said, hey, I want to buy a house. And for the last 5 years, maybe they have been, you know, investing themselves and trying to, you know, see if they can make any money off of that. When I talk and I have a client home buyers consultation, I actually go through the steps of what they should be focusing from 1 through 4, and that's actually number 4. And I want to know if you agree with this. Number 1, I always tell people you should own at least your primary home, right? I believe homeowners have an average net worth 42 times higher than renters. Number 2, you should have at least 6 months of emergency fund paid off any bad debt, which I know I wanted to talk about some of that. Good debt versus bad debt, which mean pretty much like credit cards, high interest stuff. 4th would be maximizing your 401k or having an IRA account. And then last should be like trying to mess with anything to do with stocks, or even at that point being like, maybe I need to meet with somebody like you to manage some of my money. What are your thoughts on that?
I think that's pretty spot on.
Okay.
Yeah. I think that's pretty spot on. The only thing I may add, and it's yours is spot on, is I like side hustles. I think that if people work a W-2 job, if you're kind of wired as an entrepreneur, you should try to put your hand to something else. So investing in education that could potentially make you money on the side, like doing a course or something like that. And so maybe like an investment fund with viewing it as like you as the stock, investing in yourself. But I mean, I think you nailed it. Totally.
Sounds good. I was curious on that.
Yeah.
How much of your job, what percentage of what you do day in and day out is sales?
So client interaction, prospect interaction.
Prospect side, less client maintenance and more client acquisition.
Yep. I would say that's probably 70% of what I do. We've got a team in place that nurtures and takes care of our existing clients. But I would say the thing I'm best at is bringing in new clients.
And it's Northwestern Mutual style, where it's like you meet somebody and you say, who are the next 2 people I need to meet?
I don't ask for referrals anymore.
You don't?
Yeah, no, I just pay for lead sources, and we do seminars and stuff. I just don't like doing that.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. I probably should. I just haven't found a great way to do it.
Yeah.
We're actually going to ask you for a few people after this
That's
is
perfect.
over.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine.
Do you know 2 people that
Happy to provide.
So you mentioned one,
gonna-
interest rates,
Yeah.
another big word, inflation, market cycles. So in this time, I think maybe where we live in Oklahoma, a lot of people feel more certain than before
Yep.
the previous administration. But I mean, I think overall we know that our economy is not as great as it once was, right?
Yep.
COVID had a big play into that. So what do you tell people on like, how should they be managing their money whenever there's so much economic uncertainty?
Yeah. When it comes to investments, it's important to remove any emotion from it. So long as you don't need all the money tomorrow, the market over a 15-year period, if you take a look at 15-year windows, has never really returned negative. Historically, the S&P's returned 10.4% every single year. And so it's not really about timing the market, it's about time in the market.
Dollar cost average.
Dollar cost averaging, keeping it in, adding to it. And so when it comes to the investing side, so long as you have that emergency fund, and if something were to hit the fan, you can get to it. Other than that, be invested in a way to where the ups and downs, the fluctuations, aren't ever really out of your comfort zone. And there's a way to do that. It's, understanding your risk tolerance and picking investments that align with that.
What is your opinion? And you're probably very savvy to this because you've been at the places you've been, but what is your opinion of like whole life insurance
Yeah.
as a vehicle?
Yeah. I think it has,
Because that's what
place.
you pitched. That's what you pitched back.
I pitched that for 5 years.
Uh-huh.
And I think that's what taught me how to really, I guess, sell. I tell people I don't really sell anymore. I'm more of an educator. I don't really ask people to make the move. They're adults. They could decide. I just provide them the information, and then I ask them, hey, where do you want to go from here?
Yeah.
So whole life insurance, I think, is a great tool for specific needs. I'm a most of the time buy term and invest a difference kind of guy. Now, when you get to people that have higher incomes, I think there's more of a case for it because there is a tax efficiency side to it. But more than that, really the place I see it most working out is like estate planning needs.
Yeah.
So when you're over that exclusion rate and you have an estate tax that's due, positioning life insurance to offset that. And most people don't have that problem.
Yeah, I've always just disliked the loss of liquidity that
Yeah.
you don't have that liquidity for a long time.
Yeah. And for guys like us, it's nice to have liquidity because, you could find a deal and
Yeah.
deals pay sometimes, most
right.
of the time. Yeah.
Starting at like what income level would you say would be worth looking at that?
Yeah,
Or even
so-
considering it?
Whenever you're maxing out, if so, let's just say a married couple, your 401k, their 401k, your Roth, their Roth. Now we start to ask, okay, does a well-designed life insurance policy make sense? I'm not a life insurance guy. And most of the time we'll get to no. Let's just put it into like a brokerage account. But that's when the conversation can be had. Now, if your net worth's over 11 million, I think that's I haven't brushed up on that. Then there's a case for that estate planning tax because anything over that exclusion amount's taxed at 40%. And, the IRS is going to get that. And there are ways that they've allowed to offset that if you have enough time and runway to plan it out.
Sure.
Yeah.
Man, the last question I have for you, and there's loan officers, other loan officers that listen to this, and they're Alfredo has shared this story. I'm sure a lot of people have heard it, but I think you've been doing this for over 20 years, and what really turned your business was coaching. And you started coaching or got coached how long ago?
2013.
2013. Well, at the time, I think that was probably the only coaching program.
It was
like
the one.
The
only
one.
significant
Yeah.
one that I knew of.
And now there's a lot more, but I feel like there's probably like a couple of them that really stand out. One of the ones that I really look and follow a lot of their stuff, really pitch on like, hey, instead of focusing on realtors, which that's our bread and butter, we should be looking at financial advisors as loan officers.
Yeah.
I'm curious what you think on that. Being a financial advisor and being around a lot of financial advisors over the last few years, especially in our market, if you would say like that it's different per market, or like just your thoughts on it being a financial advisor.
Man, that's a great point. Our clients, if it's the right advisor, our clients do what we say. So, I mean, if I've got a surgeon client, if I call him in surgery, he answers. So if he asks me which lender he should use and I tell him, he'll at least go have a conversation with him. So I think we have such high rapport with our clients that makes a lot of sense. That and maybe like CPAs.
I knew we'd be connected somehow.
Yeah,
That's what I told
there we go. Absolutely. I think that's brilliant. That's brilliant.
So if you have 100 people that you're managing their money, how many of them do you think are asking you, hey, do you have any recommendations? And then do you think that there's financial advisors that are proactively saying, if somebody says, hey, I think we're looking to upgrade our home, or we're, because I think that's kind of who you're dealing with. But even most people that are like have the clients, they're probably not gonna be first time home buyers. So it's like, how many of those financial advisors do you think are saying like, well, hey, you got to call my guy? Like, you know what I mean? So I'm curious on that.
I think if it's a good advisor, they should be asking every year or twice a year, are there any major purchases coming, any major changes? I mean, that's part of the fact finding and in the update process.
Or when clients make your clients make decisions like that, do they come to you and just, hey, can you check to make sure I'm good to do this? Are they coming to you for that advice even when they're about to purchase a home?
I would say 50-50.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's more of a, let's get an update. I mean, how are you guys doing? How's savings? Any big trips planned? Any new vehicles that you want to buy? And then they may say, hey, we actually are looking for a new house. And so at that point, perfect. We have some great lenders that our clients have used. Here's a call. Yeah. A card, call Alfredo, call Will. I think you just need to keep it in front of the advisor and remind them, because it's important to me that they're in good hands. And anytime I can make a referral and it works and it's a good experience, that makes the client more sticky for me. And stickiness is very, very important in my business.
I like that.
Yeah. Man, I enjoyed this. I enjoyed meeting you, Alfredo.
Just what's next for Omar?
That's a great question.
In part one and part two, what advice do you have for the listener out there right now that maybe has those entrepreneur dreams and maybe is going through something tough like you went through? And so those two questions. What's next for you, and what advice do you have?
So I have been stuck on the concept of my life's work and playing for really the age of 70 or 80. And so that's more like taking a long-term approach. So I think if you look at your goals in a matter of like, hey, what can I do in 4 decades? That kind of opens it up for you. So what I want, and I think it'd be fun to spend, the next 4 decades doing it, is I would like to build a firm that's named with like the Edward Joneses, the Fishers, like, multi-trillion dollar, maybe like a couple $100 billion would be great of assets under management. And so that's just going to take constant large thinking, constant pushing myself outside of my comfort zone, and then consistent action every single day.
I believe it, man.
That's next for me. Yeah. Thank you. Next, what was the next one?
What advice would you have for, you could even frame it this way. What advice do you have for that young 20-year-old that you were in that time? 2
things. Invest in yourself. So I get a lot of young guys that come up and say, hey, what stock should I be buying? I've got $3,000. Well, unless you pick the Amazon, it's probably not going to do much. So I would use that $3,000 and make yourself more valuable in the marketplace. So whatever your interests are, invest in yourself. View yourself as a stock. Because if you get there and you get those skills, then you can make that $200,000, $300,000, $400,000 a year. And then the savings becomes a little bit more relevant. And then 2, I just think tough times don't last, tough people do. And so understanding that for every bad that there's a good. So you can't enjoy the sunny day unless you've experienced the rainy day. And I learned this when my mom passed. Like, I was dealing with grief. And then I had this epiphany, like, no, grief is a beautiful thing because you can't have grief unless you have love first. So the grief symbolizes the amount of love that you had. And so just like understanding, like, you can't enjoy the mountaintop unless you've experienced the valley. So when you're in the valley, like, now it's a good thing.
Yeah.
Because it's going to make the opposite more appreciable.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Man, that's so good, man. That's so good.
Appreciate you coming on, man.
See how you do under pressure. Yeah, I've been wanted this.
I feel like this is the only genuine conversation I have like all week.
Myself up, moving on to the better.